So in your PowerPoint, there's a construction here. So the cuff, sleeve, placket, bind, pattern construction. So it all sounds very technical, and it is a little bit technical, but if you just follow these instructions, you should be completely fine. And we're going to do, we have to obviously have our sleeve hem on here. So when it's finished, we have tucks, we have two tucks, we have our placket on top, we have our bind underneath that all gets sewn onto the cuff here. So, like the measurements do have to be quite precise. I know in industry, I've seen videos where they literally just, cut the bottom of the sleeve, whatever, and then, the person chops it off as they're sewing it, or they make the tucks a bit bigger or something like that. But I find that, when you're doing the cuff and the sleeve hem, that you actually start with the cuff construction. So there are three elements to that. So we start with 18 centimeters for our wrist measurement. We add 2.5 on for ease, and 2.5 on for an extension. So that gives us a 23 centimeter wide cuff, which is what we've got here. So, and to do the cuff, it's literally just a rectangle. So we just need to do this. In the instructions here, it actually says that the cuff is 5 centimeters wide. Actually, that is 5 centimeters wide. Okay, that's fine. I thought it looked smaller, but it's just an illusion. So we're literally making a rectangle. So this is 23 centimeters by 10 centimeters, and then we add seam allowances onto this. So we'll need to add a 1 centimeter seam allowance all the way around. And I'm actually doing this pattern piece that I'm creating now is full scale, which is why it looks so big compared to my other patterns. But just to show you, how simple it is. And then all we're doing is putting a notch in the middle to indicate the fold. And you also, you'll find in your pre-cut shirt too that this outer layer, so this is the outer one that gets folded and sewn first, this outside layer will be interfaced. So you would generally have one pattern piece this size for the cuff, for the complete cuff, and then you'd have a smaller pattern piece half the size for an interfacing piece. And the grain line on your cuff, again, as our previous discussion, follows the length of the cuff. Okay, so that's our cuff construction. Now we'll go on to our sleeve hem construction. So I've gone back to the half scale pattern pieces now. So what I'm going to do for this, I'm not going to go all the way down. I'm going to do the sleeve head, marking my notches, and then I'm just going to put a line across the bottom here. Okay, this is our construction line, and then I need to find the center of that. So I put a line from the underarm points. Now I put my ruler on that to find the center, and then take that all the way down to the hem there. And the reason that this point here is so important for our cuff is because when you iron a sleeve, generally, well, what should happen, I think, is that this first pleat, the actual knife edge of the pleat, should line up with the shoulder. So when you fold the sleeve in half and go to iron it, it should actually like fold in half all the way up. Because what happens sometimes on business shirts is that these aren't really they're in no particular place. So when they fold the sleeve in half and they start ironing, but by the time they get down here, the pleat's there, but this line is over here, so it doesn't line up. So I always make it, a thing that pleat lines up with the fold in the sleeve. So what we need to do now is, actually, and this is where this little example comes in handy. So the line that I've come down is, so this one here, this pleat, you can see that I've got a notch, 2 notches for each pleat, so 2 notches there and there, and so this is the one that lines up with that point there. And another important thing is that for this reason, when you do the pleats, that you have one pleat on the right side of the sleeve hem and one pleat on the left hand side. So, and then another interesting thing that comes here is that when this is originally made as a pattern piece, that's literally just a slash there. So you cut up there, and then you use a 1 centimeter seam allowance on either side. So this is what the piece actually needs to be for it to work. But the thing is, once this is, when this is bound, when this is folded over and bound, that length actually stays the same because we've got a 1 centimeter bind with a 1 centimeter seam allowance here. So that just goes, that length stays the same. But on this side, we sew it on at 1 centimeter, and by the time we flip out our placket and turn it under, we've actually added another 1.5 centimeters onto the length here. So in our calculation, we start with the finished cuff, which with the pattern we've already done, which is finished at 23 centimeters. We add in the pleat amount times the number of pleats. So we've got 2 pleats here, and each pleat is 2 centimeters big. So that's another 4 centimeters, so that takes us up to 27 centimeters. And then we minus this extension, so from the raw edge here out to this fold line. And in this sample, it looks like 1 centimeter, but it is actually 1.5 centimeters. And that 1.5 centimeters is consistent. Like if you have a placket that's 2.5 centimeters wide finished, that extension bit is always going to be 1.5 because the seam allowance is always 1 centimeter. So that adding all of that up, that brings us, and then taking off the 1.5, we come back to 25.5 centimeters, and that's the width. So the 25.5 is the width of the fabric along the bottom here. So from here to here. And this piece doesn't have seam allowances included as well, so it will be a bit wider than that. So because we've got 25.5, we need to go the same amount both sides. So that will be 12.75 centimeters. That's right. And there's our piece there. So then that calculation gives us the width of the bottom of our sleeve here. So then we do our 1 notch here to indicate the pleat to the right or left for you. Then we need a gap between the 2 pleats, and then another pleat here. So this is our pleat here, our gap, which is 1.5 centimeters, and then another 2 centimeter space for our pleats. And then when these are folded, when they're sewn and folded, they're sewn so that the 1 notch goes over and sits on top of the other notch. So like this. So what you do is so when you do pleats, you need a pleat that folds and a pleat that so is like the destination. So when you do that, then you put arrows. So we have our pleat here, a notch here as well. So our 4 notches for our 2 pleats. This is the fold, and it folds over to this notch. This is the fold, and it folds over to this notch here. And then we have another little gap, and then that's where our 2, 1, and then that's where our slash goes. So in this instance, the slash is 10 centimeters. So, and then that will be, if you want to mark that in, that's our seam allowance on either side. And at the end there where we cut that up into a little V, so that would be a little V here, our cut lines there. So if you follow these, if your pleats are this size and you're, you've used 1 centimetre seam allowance on either side of the slash, then, this measurement should work. The 25.5 should work for you. And then from those points, then we can measure that. We can take that up to the underarms. And then we just need to add seam allowances for this. And then transfer our notches onto the edge there.
Have you taken any length off the block to allow for the cut?
No. I did think of that just before, but I thought,
Well,
I forgot to mention that. So yes, generally, as I've said in one of my other pattern making videos that has a cuff, usually you would take half the width of the cuff, so our cuff is finished 1.5 centimeters here. Generally, half of that, 2.5, you would take off the length of the sleeve before you do this hem construction here. Because if you have a full length sleeve, because this length here should sit right on the wrist, and then that would mean that this cuff would go down over the, a bit too far down over the sleeve. So, so yes, you could take that off, but you would take that length off when you just get to this point. When you mark this down, you do this across here, and then you come back your 2.5 centimeters to draw the line, and then this whole construction starts here.
Sure.
And then, so 1 centimeter, and then again 1 centimeter. Okay, and so then we'll just do we need to do our placket pieces. So you can see here the 2 pieces. So this is the bind piece on the one side there. And I'll just measure that. I think that's 12 centimeters. So our bind is literally like 4 times a seam allowance, really. Yes, it's really important though when you're sewing this on that you don't stop right up at the end here, because remember that you have to slash into that point. So if you sew all the way to here and then slash, like right up to that point there, then when you fold this over, and it's bound, you're going to have a little hole there. So because what happens here is that this should be
Actually, so it needs to be 2 centimeters longer than the slash line at the top there.
So maybe the 12 centimeters is correct.
Yeah, I'd say so. Because it's an extra centimetre out to...
So what we need here is for that little strip to go up, and then once this folds over, that tucks in,
Yeah, it covers everything up.
and then yes, that covers it up. And so on the inside, you know, we actually want this to be tucked up inside here, and then that gets brought with the stitching going across, which is in the sewing video for the placket as well. And then our placket, which is the other side, obviously this side has to be the same length, so it'll be 12. So our 1 centimetre seam allowance, and then the 2.5 centimetres width. So this is our line. So we've got this seam allowance here which sews on, and then we've got a 2.5 centimetre width to take us like halfway to that fold line there, and then we need another 2.5. And then another 1 centimetre on the other side. And so 12 centimetres up from the bottom. And then we need, so this here, this is the fold, and so we can't have the fold going up into a raw edge. So you can see here, there would be the fold there. So we need it, there's the line, so this line here is this line here, but we still need a seam allowance on this side to give us a seam allowance, so when we can actually fold that under on both sides and get that finished width. So that's a 1 centimetre seam allowance. And then this length, I'll actually just go by this machine, so that's 15. So and then we'll do a little point on top there. And then we just need to neaten that up. So that's
And this can be a design thing. Sometimes you see a square end
exactly.
there rather than a pointed one, so that's up to you as a designer.
So these measurements are on the sheet, and they're also, you can measure your pre-cut shirt pieces as well. So,
And I have some templates that you can use as well,
yeah.
or design your own.
And so there's our placket, so we'll cut 1 pair of those. And
grains just doesn't.
well, yeah, grain usually has
Yeah.
lengthways here, same thing on the
They're not
line.
usually fused. They're just
No. And you can, yeah, like we said, this placket can be any size. It's good to keep the, like the width of 1 centimetre seam allowance with a 2.5 finish, but you could literally take the placket all the way up to the underarm if you wanted to, like across underarm level, as an idea, and then you could put buttons on there as well. Like this shirt, this has a button. This is quite a traditional thing of having a button here, so it's like they create a placket that has an opening, and then they're worried that there's hair showing through there, so they put a button there to cover it up. So
I thought it was just because it was cute.
well, it is cute as well because it's always a smaller button that goes on the placket than on the cuff. So yes, it is cute. Anyway, there's our sleeve done, and next we're on